Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining our briefing on the City of Philadelphia's response to gun violence. This briefing is for press only. If you are not a member of the press, please log out and watch today's live stream on the City of Philadelphia's Facebook page, or you can tune in on 900 AM or 96.1 FM WURD. We will begin today with opening remarks by Mayor Jim Kenney. Mayor, you have the floor.
Thank you, Dina. Good afternoon, everybody, and thanks for being here. As you know, last week, City Council and our administration reached a deal on the fiscal year 22 operating and capital budgets. I want to thank all members of City Council, especially Council President Clark, for their partnership. Among the items debated for several weeks was funding for violence prevention initiatives to both address the immediate crisis as well as tackle the systemic root causes of violence. I think I can speak for the city government as a whole, including our administration and City Council, when I say there is no greater priority for us than reducing violence, saving lives, and creating a safer city for us all. As a result of the ongoing input from City Council, the city will be able to dedicate more than $150 million to reduce violence through an array of strategies focused on community empowerment, employment and careers, healing, prevention, and safe havens for children and youth. Between existing, new, and expanded programs we originally proposed back in April, as well as additional resources added, $155.7 million will be invested to reduce and prevent violence. It's important to note that this doesn't include our significant educational and anti-poverty investments, nor our traditional economic development activities. With those efforts added in, our commitment to anti-violence easily totals hundreds of millions of dollars each year. Within the $155.7 million is $20 million for new community grants initiative with council, $1.5 million for 2 evening reporting centers, and $5.6 million for the Commerce Department, for a total of $27.1 million, which both the administration and council agreed to. The $155.7 million also includes the administration's originally proposed $18 million in new anti-violence initiatives, as well as funds for the Office of Workforce Development, Parks and Rec, and the Free Library compared to what we were able to do in fiscal year 21. We've also broadened our definition of what constitutes violence prevention to better reflect the array of services that play a part in our violence prevention strategy. A total of $30 million will fund $13.3 million for 911 triage, co-responders, and mobile crisis units, $10.1 million for restorations to Parks and Rec and the Free Library, $3.5 million for a transitional jobs program and the Office of Workforce Development, $1.3 million for Roadmap Community Response, $1.3 million for Group Violence Initiative Intervention and Community Crisis Intervention Program expansions, $500,000 for our existing Targeted Community Investment Grants Program, $130,000 for L&I demolitions and Operation Pinpoint areas, $125,000 for the Office of Violence Prevention. There's also $11 million in rollover funds for programs that did not start in FY21 that will be available in FY22. That brings our new FY22 anti-violence spending to a total of $68 million. We have to continue to work together with all our grassroots partners and other agencies within the criminal justice system to solve this challenge. And with the new partnership announced by President Biden today and the federal support that it can bring, I'm confident that our city is on track to addressing this epidemic. So now I'd like to turn it over to Erica Atwood and some other partners for more details.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you all this afternoon for being here. Again, my name is Erica Atwood. I serve as Senior Director for the Office of Policy and Strategic Initiatives for Criminal Justice and Public Safety within the Managing Director's Office. And today I will be highlighting a number of items. First off, wanted to bring some attention to a couple of our grantees in light of the budget commitments that have been made for FY22. Wanted to kind of pull a spotlight of some of our grantees from our targeted community investment grants in our most recent cycles. We have 2 today, Power of Paint Art Academy in Management and Beyond the Bars. First up, Power of Paint Art Academy in Management is a program that works to connect young people and community using art and wellness activities to promote self-awareness, social responsibility, safety, and mental health. And with us today, we have Vanessa Young.
Hi, my name is Vanessa Young. I'm a creative director and one of the founders of Power of Paint. We started 4 years ago as a small nonprofit. We were using someone's basement just to teach supplemental art classes. And then we, especially during COVID, we noticed a lot of children needed a lot more help dealing with the trauma that they were facing. So we started this program where we deliver the supplies to children's doorsteps. All they have to do is come online and they can, sign up for the classes that we teach by an organization called the Mayor. We've had about 1,000 children just in the West Philadelphia area be serviced by that program. We also have summer camps and enrichment programs where we teach things like coding, web development, entrepreneurship skills, and leadership skills. We have a mentorship program where we do mentorship with up-and-coming entrepreneurs and artists just to get them on track to career setting. We're looking to work in workforce development this coming school year. The reason why Tisha and I are really passionate about what we do, neither one of us are from Philadelphia, but when we came to Philadelphia, we noticed how much camaraderie the city really had. And we both just thought that it would be wise if we took our talents, her as a psychotherapist and me as an artist and activist, to just come together and use it to help children and families. And in that time, we've, in the last 3 years, we've been able to service about 2,500 families across the nation with different programs, be it STEM or art or whatnot. The gun violence plague in the city is especially concerning for somebody like me. I live in West Philadelphia. It's one of the hot zones for the violence that's going on. But our offices are based out of West Philadelphia. So we had like children who were part of our program or who we've come across just at the park or playground helping out be murdered and things like that. So Tisha and I are really just trying to step up and do whatever we can to kind of, address the gun violence that's going on, especially within the communities we serve. Thank you for having us.
Thank you, Vanessa. It's Vanessa Young with Power of Paint Art Academy in Management. And next up, we have Matthew Kerr. And Matthew is from Beyond the Bars.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much, Vanessa, for the incredible work that your org does. So my name is Matthew Kerr, and I'm the co-director at an organization called Beyond the Bars. We are a student-driven and community-based music program and career planning program that began over 6 years ago teaching youth who were incarcerated over at PIC. And during that time, we taught way too many talented young people who said that we were their first music program. So we would see amazing young people use music as this medium for their growth, for their healing, and also for self-expression. But what broke our hearts is many of our young people were still looking at substantial sentences at that time. Our young people further expressed through music the various traumas that they had been exposed to previous to incarceration, whether it was talking about homelessness, exposure to physical violence or sexual violence, exposure to the foster care system, exposure to divestment, right, within resources. And so what we did is over 4.5 years ago, we branched out and we said, systemic problems need systemic solutions. And we know so many amazing community-based programs throughout our city that are doing work for our young people. And we work to then partner with as many different community-based programs as possible, where we could then go in and build out musical spaces and musical programs. So since then, we've built out 11 different musical spaces with all over Philadelphia, whether it be north, northwest, south, southwest, west, as I said before, Juniata only. And we work to essentially go in, build out 6 Mac computer recording labs, as well as teaching drums, guitar, bass, piano. And essentially the goal of the program is to have, basically for it to be student-centric in that young people learn how to play instruments, do songwriting, work on building their self-expression skills, build up their self-efficacy skills. And then from there, we then also offer career counseling, where we help young people to kind of identify what fields they want next. So through the targeted communities program, we were able to build 3 new musical spaces. Right previously to that, we built out a musical space at various homeless shelters such as YSI and Covenant House. And most recently, we built out musical spaces and programs at the Block Gives Back in Pan over at located right around K&A, as well as NOMO at Broad and Girard, as well as with Ceasefire over in in Germantown, as well as we've been building a lot of musical spaces. So I get so excited talking about them. As well, what was the last time we just built? As well as Children's Crisis Treatment Center over at around 4th and Lehigh. So basically, and we want to make musical spaces as accessible for young people as possible, so that young people don't have to take 2 buses, 3 trains, or anything like that to get to a great music program in their community. Down the line, we want to keep building out these musical spaces, these recording studios, and try to make music as accessible as possible through partnerships with Parks and Rec and libraries and things of that nature as well. Obviously, when it comes to violence prevention, this hits home for us, and we believe music is one of the many outlets and mediums that our young people need to both express their traumas their emotions through that, as well as to continue to grow and heal from it.
Thank you, Matthew. Thank you both, Matthew and Vanessa. And just as a reminder, our Target Community Investment Grant application is open. It closes on July 23rd. And so for other organizations and community leaders that are out there that have great programs like the 2 that I mentioned, please be sure to apply for their community investment grants. Thank you again, Matthew and Vanessa. Next, I'd like to talk a little bit about kind of the opportunities that exist within the Office of Policy and Strategic Initiatives for Criminal Justice and Public Safety. We have a number of job openings that are available that we would like a diverse pool of candidates for. Just as a quick reminder, the Office of Policy and Strategic Initiatives encompasses 4 departments: Town Watch Integrated Services, Office of Violence Prevention, Office of Criminal Justice, and Office of Reentry Partnerships. In 3 of the departments, we have positions open. In our Office of Violence Prevention, we have 2 case manager positions open for our Group Violence Intervention Program. And we also have a position for an executive assistant. In our Office of Criminal Justice, we have a racial equity strategist, as well as a 911 triage project manager. And in our Office of Reentry Partnerships, we have a community engagement manager. All of these, if you would like more information on the job postings or the programs you heard about today, please email cjps@philly.gov and be sure to reach out to us via social media at Philly Alive 215 on Instagram and Facebook. Thank you. And I'll pass it over to Commissioner Outlaw. And I'll pass it over to Commissioner Outlaw.
I got it. Took me a minute to hit the unmute button and the camera button, but thank you, Erica. Good afternoon. Before I get started, I'd like to spend a brief time discussing some of the events of this past weekend on what should have been a beautiful holiday weekend where countless Philadelphians were outside celebrating the Juneteenth and Father's Day holidays. Over a dozen people were shot. 4 people lost their lives. 2 of these gunshot victims were children, with one being 3 years of age, and the other being 13. Thankfully, they will survive, as only by the grace of God were their injuries not more severe. These are our children. Make no mistake, the ongoing violence witnessed across our city serves as a somber reminder that more work needs to be done. As a law enforcement body, the police department certainly has an essential role and responsibility in ensuring the safety of those who live, work, and visit in our city here in Philadelphia. And we're committed to utilizing every tool and strategy available to us in the battle to eliminate gun violence from our communities. With that said, forensics are an important component in this battle. And to that end, I would like to again thank the ATF for their assistance in bolstering our forensic efforts through their use of their mobile crime lab. The ATF NIBIN van, or the National Integrated Ballistic Information Network van, was on site at the PPD Forensic Sciences building for 2 months. In that time, the ATF test fired and screened 304 crime guns through NIBIN, resulting in 112 hits that linked fired cartridge casings, FCCs, recovered at crime scenes to one of the 304 recovered crime guns. The issues we face are considerable in scope, and the help of our partners and stakeholders is invaluable. Our citizens and our children are being victimized as a result of this continued violence. The PPD and our partners recognize the gravity of the challenges that we face, and we know we must continue to work together, citizens, police, stakeholders, in order to make headway against this ongoing scourge of violence that's taken a hold of our city. We're working very diligently and passionately toward the goal of a safer Philadelphia for everyone. As evidence, we have seen some recent positive trends in targeted areas through our Operation Pinpoint program. Deputy Commissioner Joel Dales, who's the Deputy Commissioner of Patrol Operations, will provide some of that data shortly, and he'll be followed by Deputy Commissioner Ben Nash, Deputy Commissioner of Investigations, who will give updates on some of this weekend's violence. But I want to quickly address and change gears as we address the upcoming 4th of July holiday. We know that the warm summer months bring more opportunities for people to gather and enjoy the weather and festivities outdoors. We are already several days into Wawa Welcome America festivities, which are occurring throughout the city. The events are occurring both indoors and outdoors, and we'll be increasing our patrols in relevant areas. As we all know, the Welcome America Festival culminates with a large, extravagant fireworks display on the Benjamin Franklin Parkway. This brings me to the next point I want to discuss. Please leave the fireworks to the professionals. There has been some confusion over the use of fireworks in our city, and I hope to clear some of that up now. On July 3rd, 2019, a bill was passed via the Philadelphia Fire Code legalizing the use of certain fireworks in the city of Philadelphia. There are three types of explosive items you will encounter. The first one being consumer fireworks, then commercial fireworks, and then illegal explosive devices. In short, the only fireworks your average citizen can utilize in the city are commercial grade fireworks. Still, you can be in violation of the law if, while utilizing them, you use them within 100 feet of any occupied structure, you use them on public or private property without permission of the owner, if they are used from within or pointed toward a vehicle or a building, or if used when a person is under influence of alcohol or drugs. As you can see from the graphic, utilizing either commercial grade or illegal explosive devices, such as M-Series devices, can lead to serious charges. We're talking felonies here, many of which gets prosecuted federally. Regardless of the type of work you choose to utilize, fireworks you choose to utilize, all of these devices can be dangerous and potentially fatal. Nationally, over 9,100 injuries are treated in emergency rooms in the month around the 4th of July. And sadly, almost half of these injuries are to the extremities and eyes. So again, please leave the fireworks to the professionals. It's not only about being a good neighbor, but it's about keeping yourself and those around you safe. It's also important to note that with summer activities now well underway, there are more people enjoying leisure activities outdoors, as well as more and more people who are getting behind the wheel of a car. Again, wear your seatbelt, please slow down and be mindful of your surroundings and exercise patience with pedestrians, as well as with other motorists and cyclists. It should go without saying, but do not drink and drive. Call a cab, call a friend, use a ride-share service or public transportation. Whatever you do, do not get behind the wheel of a vehicle when you've been drinking. We implore everyone to stay safe and enjoy the next few weeks in our city. Celebrate, but please celebrate safely. As of this morning, we've experienced over 260 homicides in our city. These numbers, these statistics that are reported out are so much more than numbers. These are lives lost, entire communities affected, and families that have been changed forever. We all have to do better. We're working diligently and passionately toward the goal of a safer Philadelphia for everyone. As evidence, we've seen some recent positive trends, as I stated, in targeted areas through our Operation Pinpoint program. DC Dales will provide some of that data, and he'll be followed again by DC Nash, who will give some updates on this weekend's violence. DC Dales?
Thank you, Commissioner. You can go to the next slide. Thank you. So I will start with the citywide homicide and shooting victim stats. Looking at the top of the chart year to date, as of June 20th of this year, Philadelphia had 1,003 shooting victims. And out of the 1,003, 259 were homicides. In comparison to last year, homicides are up 38%, 259 versus 181 last year. And shooting victims are up 27%, 1,003 this year versus 790 last year. Out of the 259 homicides, 54 occurred inside a residential building. It's not listed on the chart, but 10 of the homicides occurred inside a commercial building, which brings the total number of homicides that occurred inside to 64. Looking at the bottom left of the chart, it shows the motives for the homicides. The top three remains the same. Number one, argument, 2, drugs, and 3, domestic, which is currently up by 189% in comparison to last year. Next slide, please. This slide shows the citywide homicide and shooting victim stats weekly comparison from, if you look at the far right, from 6/14 to 6/20, we had 14 homicides, 6 shooting victims, which include the homicides, and 45 shooting occurrences. Shooting occurrences is an incident count where an individual or individuals were shot. So we're basically counting the incidents and not the number of shooting victims. If you notice, we had 60 shooting victims in comparison to last week, which was 54. That number is high because we had several multiple shootings this week where we had triples and double shootings. And as you look at the bottom where it says 45, those are the shooting incidents, the same exact amount of shooting incidents last week in comparison to this week. So as you can see, those multiple shootings boost those numbers up into reference to our shooting victims category. Next slide. This slide shows the comparison between citywide homicides and homicides that occurred in the pinpoint grids. For those of you who are watching for the first time, Operation Pinpoint is our overall crime fighting and information sharing strategy that is in alignment with the roadmap for safer communities. Operation Pinpoint is basically a combination of several policing models such as hotspot policing, intelligence-led policing, community-oriented policing, and offender-focused policing. We have over 45 pinpoint grids throughout the city that were identified and established based on data and intelligence that showed high levels of violent crimes within these grids. And if you look at the top of the chart, it shows citywide homicides up 38%. And looking at the bottom chart, it shows homicides in the pinpoint grids up 9%. Next slide, please. This slide shows the comparison between citywide shooting victims and shooting victims in the pinpoint grids. Citywide shooting victims are up 27%, and the pinpoint grids are down 11%. Next slide. This slide shows the year-end total VUFA arrests for 2017 through 2020 and the total VUFA arrests year-to-date for 2021 from January 1st to June 20th. VUFA is an acronym for Violation of Uniform Firearms Act. So when I mention VUFA arrest, it means the person was arrested for illegally possessing a firearm. In 2020, we reached an all-time high for VUFA arrests that totaled 2,324. And so far this year, we have made 1,339 VUFA arrests. I would like to point out that this time last year, we had 816 VUFA arrests, which is a 64% increase when compared to the year-to-date total. Next slide. As of June 21st of this year, 2,906 crime guns were recovered in our city. A crime gun is any gun recovered by police as part of a criminal investigation. I want to note that this does not include guns from the buyback or turn-in programs. Last year, we recovered 2,052 crime guns by the end of June. Comparing that number to this year's number year to date, which again is 2,906, we are currently showing a 42% increase, which is 854 more crime guns recovered this year in comparison to last year. Next slide. And lastly, year to date, 277 privately made firearms, also known as ghost guns, were recovered in Philadelphia. Ghost guns are unserialized, unregulated, and untraceable firearms that are assembled by the consumer. I would like to point out that in 2020, a total of 250 ghost guns were recovered by the end of the year, for the entire year. As of June 21st, we have exceeded that number. We didn't finish the year out yet. We exceeded that number. We're now at 277. This shows a significant increase in ghost guns recovered this year in comparison to not only 2020, but also in 2019, as you can see, was 95. And with that, I will now turn it over to Deputy Commissioner Ben Nash, who is the Deputy Commissioner of Investigations, who will speak about cases we wish to highlight. Ben Nash.
Thank you, Deputy Commissioner Joel Dales. Good afternoon, everyone. Today, I want to highlight some recent investigations conducted by members of our investigative units where assistance from the public is needed. In two of the incidents, I'm going to speak about shooting of juveniles. And in one of those incidents, as the commissioner alluded to, a 3-year-old was struck by gunfire. Before you go to the video, if you could put up the wanted for Mr. Black, there should be a wanted poster. The first incident I want to talk about involves help that we're looking for from the public to locate an individual by the name of Rashid Black. He's been identified for a shooting that occurred on Sunday, June 13th at approximately 1 p.m. The shooting occurred in the 6500 block of North Broad Street. And the shooting, as we hear about too often, involved a fight over social media posts. And in this case, it involved women that were fighting. And the woman that was shot, the young woman that was shot, was only 16 years old. During that fight that occurred on the 6500 block of North Broad Street, a male individual from a group of people that were witnessing the fight pulled out a gun, fired that gun 6 times, and struck the 16-year-old female in the leg. Shooting victim was transported to Albert Einstein Medical Center. She was placed in stable condition. The investigators were able to track the offender to an apartment building on the 6500 block of North Broad Street. And we did identify a suspect. Subsequently, the investigators from Northwest Detectives obtained an arrest warrant. And although I don't think it's up there on the screen, we'll get that out to the public. The suspect's been identified as Rashid Black. He's 23 years old, 5 feet, 8 inches tall, 180 pounds. We've not been able to locate him since last week when we got the warrant. And we're looking for help. If anyone has any information regarding the whereabouts of Mr. Black, we urge them to contact Northwest Detectives or call our tip line at 215-686-TIPS. Okay, next is the video from Huntington, if you can put that up on the screen. And this is an incident that occurred on it occurred on Monday, but we located the victims on Tuesday, June 15th at approximately 1 p.m. At that time, officers from the 22nd District, that's the wrong video. Can you go to the previous video?
Is that right? Can you see this one?
That's the video for the next one. If we can go back to the Huntington one.
Okay, here we go.
Okay, that should be it. Okay. So in this video, two shooting victims were found inside of that Nissan Kick automobile, identified as a 34-year-old female and a 38-year-old male. They both suffered gunshot wounds to the head. Through our investigation, we determined that the victims had arrived at that location on Monday night, June 14th at approximately 9:30 p.m. We do believe that they pulled up to the location with the suspects already inside of the vehicle in the rear passenger seats of the car. And a short time after that vehicle parks in the 2700 block of West Huntington, the video showed that those 3 males, if we can run it again one more time, the video shows that 3 males exited the rear passenger area of the vehicle. They fled eastbound on Huntington. That's the vehicle that the victims were arriving in. The 3 males jumped out of the vehicle and ran. And about 2 minutes after they ran eastbound on Huntington, one of the males came back to the vehicle. That male was wearing a black hooded sweatshirt, had graphics on the front. And at the end of this video, and we'll have this available to the public, that male came back to the vehicle, picked up what looked like a cell phone, approached another car before running off himself. If anyone has any information that can help us, we would ask that they contact our homicide unit or our tip line, 215-686-TIPS. Now, the commissioner spoke about the violence from the weekend. And clearly, this video that you're about to see is from the most horrific of the violence from the weekend, and it's extremely disturbing. But I think it's important that the public have an opportunity to see this. It shows how awful this violence can be. And what you're seeing in the video are the young man that ends up being shot along with his 3-year-old son. This happened in the 1600 block of North 55th Street. It happened around 2:20 p.m. on Saturday, the 19th, in the 1600 block of 55th. And that adult male walking up with his young son approached a dark-colored Nissan vehicle up the street. You'll see it zoom in a little bit. And as the juvenile male and the adult male were getting into the passenger side, that white SUV rolls down the street. It stops just past the black Nissan. 2 males are going to jump out of that white SUV on either side of the car and immediately begin to shoot. One male shoots at the male on the passenger side, and the other male shoots at the driver's side. The 3-year-old was also struck, and the 2 males were struck multiple times throughout their body. All 3 of the individuals that were hit by gunfire were taken to Penn Presbyterian Hospital. The 2 adult males were pronounced dead at the hospital. The 3-year-old child, thankfully, suffered a non-life-threatening injury, gunshot wound to his leg, and he survived. We did recover that white SUV that is shown in that video, but to this point, we've not identified those suspects. So hopefully, anyone that's watching this has any information about this horrific incident will contact the police. Call our tip line, 686-TIPS, 215-686-TIPS, or obviously you can always call 911. We still need some information, and we're hopeful that somebody who knows something about this horrific act of violence will do the right thing and help us in this investigation to identify and arrest the individuals for this shooting. And that's it for now. I'm going to turn it back over to the mayor's office for questions.
Thank you, Deputy Commissioner. Now we will move on to Q&A for members of the press. Because of limited time, only one representative from each media outlet is permitted to ask questions. Reporters are asked to limit their questions to 3 or fewer. Today, we're limiting topics in the first round to questions related to these presentations. And if there's time for a second round, we'll open them up to other topics. Armando is also available for Spanish interpretation as needed. So if you would like to ask a question, please use the raise your hand function and we will unmute your microphone when it's your turn. Now, first up, we have Jeff Cole with Fox 29. Jeff, you're up.
Yeah, thanks everybody. If I could start with the mayor a little bit. Mayor, we were up on North 49th where there was a shooting overnight. A 29-year-old was killed. I think 35 shots were fired. We met a woman who lost a son 14 years ago, was weeping about the killing that happened overnight, and you know, was obviously saddened by the violence, but also by bullets going into the neighborhood, she said, and a car being hit. I understand what you've laid out and the people that spoke about the programs that are out there to help folks. But what do you say to those who will continue to say that the violence is so rampant and so ongoing that that they just need immediate help in some way? What would you say to folks that we're meeting?
I mean, obviously our police are working very hard, putting their life on the line every day by taking twice as many illegal guns off the street than they did the year before. I was watching news broadcast before the press conference. Bill Bratton was on talking about this national problem, and he did talk about poverty and job opportunities and education and the like. But bottom line, he came down to was that it's too easy to get a gun, and there's too many guns. So what I would say to them is we're going to hopefully work with the federal government after President Biden speaks to maybe get some of these large amounts of guns off the street and continue working hard in our communities to build trust, to build relationships, to get illegal guns off the street, and to put in place programs that give people the opportunity to make the right decisions in their life as opposed to making the wrong ones. I think everything that's going on in this country and every city in this country is abhorrent. And it's abhorrent because you can get a gun faster than you can get a driver's license. There's something wrong with that scenario. So we will continue plugging away at it and investing, making these new investments and moving forward as best we can. But we're going to need some real help on the federal level to get some of these large amounts of guns off the street.
Thank you. For the commissioner, if I could, Commissioner, if I've read properly what I think the president's going to talk about this afternoon at 3:30 is that he's going to say that he wants to quickly pull the federal licenses of gun dealers who've violated the authority that they get for having that license. Commissioner Outlaw, are gun dealers acting improperly? Is that the source of crime guns in this city? Or is it the flow of guns that come from the legal purchase of weapons? What is the flow?
I think it's a little bit of all of that, right? And every extra effort that we can get at the federal level, I think is helpful. We know that there are, firearms that are purchased legally and then handed off illegally, but we also know that, working with the ATF, that they target those gun dealers that also act illegally and improperly. So as much as we can do to multiply our efforts, if the if the ATF could, strengthen through through what the president is hopefully going to be, announcing at 4:15 this afternoon, if they get additional resources and they're able to go after more at the federal level, that allows us to be more focused with those folks that we see here at the municipal level.
Just one last question for you, Commissioner. Can you speak to the issue of bond, of bail? Do you think people that you're arresting and are being held? Are you still continuing to have a problem, as I think you've raised before, that people seem to be emerging from lockup more quickly than you'd like?
Yeah, we're hoping, again, that, as the city reopens and we go back to some form of a new norm and the courts reopen, that a lot of these cases and the backlogs would actually be cleared up as well. So we're looking forward to seeing what this new normal and an open city looks like, but there's still an issue that needs to be addressed with those who offend and then reoffend while they have open cases. And we're hoping, again, that as some of these backlogs are cleared, that we're seeing these numbers decrease.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, thanks, Jeff. Next, we have Mike Donofrio with the Philadelphia Tribune.
Okay, thanks. I guess this is for the mayor first, and Commissioner, if you'd like to add in. Do you two accept any blame for not being able to control and reduce gun violence in the city?
I mean, responsibility, yes, without a doubt. I'm the mayor, she's police commissioner, and everyone has their jobs, and we have a responsibility to address this problem. But your question seemed to indicate that this is the only city in the country that's gone through this, and it's not. And as a matter of fact, we're not even the worst at this point, and we're trying to get to reverse that. But yeah, I accept a total responsibility for fixing the problem.
Commissioner?
I think the mayor answered that well. Blame, no. Responsibility, yes, because obviously this is our jobs. We're responsible for public safety. But the police don't contribute to housing status, education, access to wealth and capital, and all of those things. We are doing what we can within the resources that we have. We are but one part of the criminal justice system. We are one part of all of the determinants that we know that are leading to the gun violence that we see here. As the mayor stated, this isn't something that's only happening here in Philadelphia, but it's happening all across the country. And there are many experts pointed out that there's more than one thing that's leading to these increases. Blame, absolutely not. Responsibility, yes, because it's our job to ensure the safety of Philadelphians here.
All right. I guess this is for the mayor. Considering the ongoing spike in gun violence, are you ready to admit that your administration's approach to reducing gun violence just isn't working?
No, I'm not willing to admit that. We're working very hard, and we'll continue working very hard, despite what your opinion may be.
Then maybe lastly, just in general, do you believe your administration is investing enough in to reduce gun violence in the city, considering that?
Well, as you can see from the last budget process, a vast majority of council believes that after our negotiations, and there's a lot more resources on the table than were there, and we'll see how much that helps.
All right. But do you think that the funding is adequate at this time?
The funding is adequate because that's what council agreed to, and that's what's on the table at the moment.
But would you like to see more if you could?
How many questions do you get, Mike? It's like you're on 5 now.
Easy, let me ask.
All right, Mike, are you good?
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you.
All right, thanks. All right, we're going to move on to Alicia Reed with CBS 3.
Hi, thank you so much. This first question is for the mayor. With the $20 million that will go to community organizations, how will the city ensure that that money is going to organizations dedicated to helping the community, as opposed to anyone that can just come in and say, yeah, I'm here to help, give me some of that money too?
Yeah, we'll go to Eric Atwood on that for the vetting process for the organizations.
Hey, Alicia. So we're in a process of determining what that is going to look like. We know that those who are closest to the problem are closest to the solution. We and the managing director's office will be working in partnership with City Council and a number of other community partners to lay out some requirements and some expectations that we have of community organizations that are going to be in historically disadvantaged communities that are vulnerable to gun violence. And so we're in the process of setting all that up, but no, that is top of mind for us and making sure that we are working with folks in community, not folks who want to do for community.
Thank you so much. And my last question is for anyone that would be able to answer this. The curfew center, what is that and how does it work?
Sure, I'll take that as well. And so what we are utilizing are pre-existing relationships with community partners. We'll use the Bridge as an example, which is a contracting organization with Department of Human Services. They have evening reporting centers. They do programming for young people who are at a higher risk of getting into trouble, getting into being victims, witnesses, or perpetrators of violence. What we will be utilizing the curfew centers for is a place to provide programming that children can go to and families can utilize voluntarily, as well as young people who we see that are out, young people under the age of 18 who are out after curfew hours. They will be encouraged to utilize the space, the safe space, as opposed to arresting them and putting them into the criminal justice system.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, next we'll move on to Brian Mendoza with Telemundo.
Hi, I don't know if Armando can translate this for us for Telemundo.
Hola, Brian.
Hola, Armando. Gusto. Buenas tardes. La ciudad había anunciado que iban a tener oficiales de policía patrullando los centros recreativos para mantener a los niños y jóvenes seguros. A eso de mediodía nosotros pasamos por los centros McVeigh y Schmidt y no vimos algún tipo de patrullaje. Entonces hablamos con residentes del área y nos dijeron que esto tampoco había ocurrido. Entonces, ¿se ha desplazado ya a oficiales a estos centros o cuándo es que esto empezará?
The question is that the city had announced that they were going to have police officers patrolling recreational centers in the city to keep young people safe. Around noon today, we went by the McVeigh and Schmidt's recreation centers and saw no one patrolling the area. We spoke to residents of the area and they tell us that this has not happened. Have officers been deployed to those centers? And if not, when will these patrols begin?
Commissioner?
I can jump in and answer that question. So each district, they have rec centers that requires more police coverage than others. Those centers where you see police also stationary there, those are the areas where we really need police. The centers where you don't see police officers, the officers would sign to within that particular zone. They are making periodic checks throughout the day during their tour. If you have an issue with that, I would reach out to the captain of that district and inquire about the coverage at that particular rec center. Or you can also email me and let me know in reference to what the community is saying about these rec centers. If they're not being policed, I need to know about it. But I'm sure the captains are on top of these covering the rec centers. It's definitely making periodic checks of those that are not receiving constant coverage.
Cada distrito tiene centros recreativos que requieren mayor cobertura policial que otros, de manera que también hay policías que están ahí estacionarios y otras áreas donde necesitamos tener más policía en los centros. Y si no se ven oficiales de policía, también en alguna zona en particular es porque están haciendo chequeos periódicos del área durante el día. Pero si hay algún asunto en el cual no se vea presencia policial, por favor contacten al capitán de sus áreas para que nos los deje saber, porque es importante que tengamos la información de manera que podamos enviar oficiales a la comunidad para recobrar esa actitud y darles seguridad a la gente joven. Si hay algún problema, también pueden comunicarse conmigo por correo electrónico, porque nosotros necesitamos saber que hay cobertura en los lugares y que se está haciendo. Gracias.
La próxima es, a principios de abril se había anunciado esta nueva iniciativa llamada All Hands on Deck para combatir la violencia. Solamente queríamos saber cómo esto ha funcionado en la ciudad y cuáles han sido algunos éxitos que se han tenido con el operativo.
Question number 2 is that at the beginning of April, a new initiative was announced called All Hands on Deck. And this was announced in order to combat violence on the streets. How has this initiative worked out? What success or successes has this operation had so far?
Well, obviously, we continue to struggle with this wide-ranging problem. Part of the issue with the rec centers too is the number of police that are available. We were not in an environment to have a conversation about increasing the level of police in the city because people are concerned about the amount of money that the police department is getting. So there's a lot of kind of back and forth on what folks want and what other folks are willing to provide and pay for. So if there's any issues relative to the all hands on deck, I don't know whether or not, Joel, you can.
Yes, so in reference to the all hands on deck, he's talking about the FBI joining forces with the police department. We have been working in conjunction with them. We have been making progress. We have several cases, which I will not reveal on this call, but they are working with us in reference to the gun violence throughout our city. And just what the mayor just mentioned, I want to make sure I clearly explain to you that we have a lot of rec centers throughout the city. Every police district, they have a rec center which requires constant police coverage. So those are the ones where you will see more police officers at these locations. But those that are not on the list as are considered as our most violent rec centers, we will make sure we have periodic checks of those locations.
La respuesta que nos da el alcalde es que obviamente hay una lucha continua a lo largo de la ciudad para confrontar esta situación y se da también en los centros recreativos, pero esto tiene que ver con el número de policías disponibles. Y por supuesto, no podemos incrementar la presencia policial a niveles deseados porque tenemos el problema del presupuesto y el dinero para el departamento de policía. Hay, por supuesto, mucha conversación que va y viene en ese respecto. Hay gente que quiere la cobertura policial, pero hay gente que tiene el control sobre el dinero y eso va a determinar qué podamos hacer al respecto. Con respecto al programa de All Hands on Deck que tenemos, nos agrega el comisionado de policía, que es el proyecto conjunto con el FBI y el Departamento de Policía de la ciudad, donde se está trabajando conjuntamente y hay avances que se han logrado. Se han logrado casos que se están resolviendo, pero obviamente no se pueden divulgar en este medio en este momento. Y esto incluye también los centros recreativos. Hay muchos de ellos en los cuales hay que tener constante presencia policial y esos son los que están en la lista de los centros con potencial de mayor violencia. En los otros hay patrullas esporádicas y se va a mantener esta presencia policial. Gracias.
Muchas gracias, Armando. Thank you.
Right, next we have Anna Orso with the Philadelphia Inquirer.
Hi, everyone. I'm not sure who the right person from the administration would be to answer this, but I just have a question about President Biden's coming announcement today. Our understanding is that Philadelphia is expected to collaborate with other cities to expand what the Biden administration is referring to as community violence interruption programs. And I'm wondering, like in Philadelphia, does that refer to group violence intervention and the community crisis intervention programs, or is it broader than that?
Erica?
Sure. Hey, Anna, how are you?
Great. How are you?
Good. And so, yes, it absolutely refers to a group violence intervention program, as well as our community crisis intervention program, which our individuals are trained by the Cure Violence model. There are a number, the hospital-based interventions are also included in this. So very similar to some of the work that's out of Temple, Healing Hurt People, out of Drexel. And there are a number of other programs, and we're getting details, I guess, as everybody else is getting. But kind of when you look at the national spectrum of interrupting and interventive programs, there are a number of programs that we have on the ground and that we'll be standing up that we'll probably classify. And as we get more information about what those are, we'll continue to share.
I see. Okay. And Erica, you mentioned laying out some sort of requirements for determining, what community organizations get these these targeted investment grants. But what about tracking the effectiveness of those programs once they're implemented? Is there a plan to do that? And what does that look like?
Absolutely. We're talking about what does evaluation look like, not only for the granting program, but for a lot of organizations don't have the capacity or the budgeted amounts for having their own evaluation. So really talking through what that would look like. So evaluation of our grant program by and large, and supporting individual organizations to have evaluations of their programs, as well as looking at how we can provide technical assistance from a local and national level for organizations on the ground as they develop building out their capacity and their impact.
Okay, great. And my last question is for the mayor. Mayor, you described some $68 million in new anti-violence spending that came as a result of the budget negotiation process and, you know, what your administration had already proposed. But my understanding is that some of that represents restored funding that had been cut during the pandemic, like for Parks and Rec or libraries. And so is it fair to say that this $68 million is all new spending?
It's new or renewed spending. I mean, we did have a pandemic, you recall, and we had to cut a lot of things. So putting that back, I think, is an accomplishment considering all we've been through. But if Rob or Marissa wants to give more details, be happy to have them take the question.
Hi, Marissa Waxman. So you're correct. Some of what is counted in the $68 million of new in FY22 that wasn't there in FY21 is some restoration for Parks and Rec, about $7 million, and about 2.9, close to just under $3 million for the free library. But most of the other funds that are in that $68 million are brand new for the very first time. That includes about $13 million for the 911 triage and co-responder, the $20 million in community partnership grants, funds to expand the group violence intervention and CCIP. So I would say the bulk of it is new, but some of it is the restoration. And as the mayor noted, you know, that is a tremendous accomplishment. Unfortunately, there are still departments who have not been able to have funds restored, and there were departments this year that will see their budgets further reduced. And so a lot of this is demonstrating where are our priorities, where are we shifting, even when we are still financially challenged.
I see. Great. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Anna. Next, we have Kristen Johansson with KYW News.
Hello, everybody. My first question is for Inspector Nash. I just want to see if you do have any of the information for the 17-year-old that you guys put out this morning, the 1200 South 58th Street homicide. Reading it, I just didn't. I read it, and it looks like, was he maybe I want to say lured there, because it looks like I may be reading that wrong, but the other person ran away and the offender followed. Like, can you just maybe?
Sure, Kristen, I'll touch on it. No, we don't think he was lured there. He was en route to somewhere. He was with the other individual. The other individual was subsequently identified as a friend who has provided us with some information about how he got there and what was going on. But we do think that there were individuals that were going after him, and he was targeted. We're trying to figure out exactly why he was targeted. We don't have that information right now, and it is another example of a juvenile that's been shot, and in this case killed on our streets. But he wasn't lured there. So I hope that helps.
Thank you. The next one is for, I believe, the commissioner. I don't know, of the three of you who would be able to speak to this, but I understand there's no new police academy classes graduating this year, and that there's also kind of a spike in police officers that are putting in for retirement and leaving. Do you know if the city is going to drop below the 6,000 police officers that we've typically had?
Kristen, it got choppy when you said something. Do you know if the city is something?
Oh, I apologize. Do you know if the city is going to drop below the 6,000 officers that the city has normally had?
Well, we're currently at about 6,000 right now. And we're hoping to get a class in, or a class starting in July. and with some subsequent classes after that. So, again, we're not at the same authorized strength where we were a year ago, and even within authorized strength, we're down. So I am actually optimistic in that there are people that still want to be police officers here. We're actively recruiting. There's still a very strong interest, and with our ability to get more people in classes as things continue to reopen, I'm not as concerned about dropping below that level just yet, but it's definitely something that we're paying very close attention to.
Thank you. And my last question is, Mayor, I know you've spoken a lot about, nationwide that there's homicides happening everywhere, but just going really city by city, Philly and Chicago are 1 and 2 for the highest number of homicides. We have far more victims than New York and LA and Boston. And New York and LA obviously far exceeding our population. Just in numbers, we have more. Is it maybe time to rethink the city's messaging? I mean, I'm out, with the neighbors as well and talking to people, and people are absolutely terrified for the children. I've had some people telling me that they want to move out of the city, that they're just so fearful of what could happen and what this summer will bring. I mean, I know you're frustrated when we ask this question, but we have people jumping out of cars and shooting when a 3-year-old's there. And so is there a way to rethink this?
Well, I mean, first of all, we do have one of the highest poverty levels in the country. And I think Chicago's struggling with the same type of thing. And that's probably why the numbers are higher. I mean, I just saw a report yesterday that New York was up 70-some% in shootings. The other problem that we face, frankly, is how do we have police on the scene when those two guys spot the guy they want to kill or shoot and jump out of the car? I mean, if you look at the video is a very difficult policing effort to try to know where that guy's going to be where those group of people are going to be at that particular time. So, I mean, I don't have the answer to that. And we're trying to place our officers in positions that will make people safer. But if you're intent on killing me and you're willing to wait for me to be in a place, it's going to be unlikely a police officer's going to be standing there to interrupt it. And that's some of the problems that we face when we deal with so many people with so many guns. So yeah, we continue to adjust, every week, every time we have an opportunity to adjust. But that particular scenario is a difficult one to intervene on.
Okay. I was really just asking about the messaging, with the city. Like, I mean, we feel like
the messaging is we're investing, $68 million more in violence prevention. We're trying to get another class through the academy. We're trying to utilize the technologies that we may be able to acquire to better police. We're trying to get folks to come with off the record, anonymous information about people who are doing this, so we can make an arrest and build a case. And I mean, those are the messages. We are putting everything we have behind this. And excuse me,
for shooting. What about the messages to them? Like
the shooters? I'm sorry, I don't understand your question.
Well, I'm just saying, you're talking about the messaging to us about what the city's doing. You're doing a rundown of that, but there's people out there that just feel free that they can go out and shoot in the middle of the street. I mean,
I don't have an answer to that psychology, and I don't know if anybody in this policing business has an answer to that psychology for the short run. But the other things that we're attempting to do is to get people to make right choices by giving them the resources they need to have a different life than they have. Obviously locking up everybody didn't work back in the Clinton years when police were many layers of police on the street. I don't have an answer to anyone psychology that will shoot somebody dead over an insult or shoot it in the vicinity of a 3-year-old child. I don't have that psychological answer.
All right, taking up your time. Thanks.
Thanks, Kristen. Next, we have Argenis Figueroa with Univision.
Hello, good afternoon. So, Armando, voy a hacerle una pregunta. Mi primera pregunta va a ser, ya sea para el alcalde o la comisionada. Quisiera saber si ellos reconocen que hay un problema serio en la policía de Filadelfia y quisiera saber qué están haciendo para corregir los problemas con el retraso en, digamos, en las respuestas que le dan al 911 y también qué están haciendo para mitigar el problema de la capacitación de oficiales de policía, porque ya no se están capacitando como se solía hacer, y además cómo están manejando el problema de la deserción de los policías en el cuerpo.
Gracias, Argenis. This is a question for either the mayor or the commissioner. And it says, do you acknowledge that there are serious problems with the police? I would like to know what's being done to fix problems with the budget, with delayed responses to 911 calls, and the fact that the police academy is not training officers regularly the way they used to, plus the fact that there's a lot of officers dropping out of the police force.
I mean, we're in a very difficult time coming out of a pandemic. Policing is not, the most popular profession these days, and it's hard to find people who want to dedicate themselves and their lives to this profession. But there are people out there. I think that the requirement that the person has to be a city resident for a year is going to make things a little difficult. We'll see how that plays out. Again, I think sometimes it's very schizophrenic when on one hand we're being pushed politically to reduce the police budget, while on the other hand people are asking us where the police are at the rec centers and and how can we have more classes in the academy. I mean, a lot of that we have to figure out a way to find that balance. So we can't make everybody happy, but we're doing our best.
La respuesta es que estos son momentos difíciles que estamos viviendo tras de la pandemia y durante la pandemia. El oficio de policía no es un oficio muy popular y ha sido difícil encontrar gente dedicada que quiera dedicarse a esta profesión. Obviamente también queremos ver cuál va a ser el resultado del requisito de que los candidatos a la Academia de Policía tengan residencia de 1 año dentro de la ciudad. Va a ser algo difícil, creemos. Y hay algo de una actitud esquizofrénica en el sentido de que se nos pide, por un lado, hay presión política para tener presencia en los centros recreativos, por ejemplo, pero al mismo tiempo también hay una presión para rebajar el presupuesto y quitarle fondos a la policía. Entonces nosotros no sabemos exactamente cómo se va a resolver este tipo de cosas, pero lo que sí sabemos es que tenemos que encontrar un balance entre las necesidades, lo que está disponible en cuanto al personal y las necesidades de la ciudad en cuanto a seguridad. Gracias.
Gracias. Mi segunda pregunta, Armando, es para la comisionada Odlo. Hemos hablado con familiares que han perdido a sus seres queridos este año y con otros residentes quienes dicen que no se sienten seguros de salir a la calle. Ella habló inicialmente de que están haciendo mayor patrullaje, pero esto no es lo que ven los residentes, por lo menos en el norte de Filadelfia. ¿Qué mensaje tiene ella para ellos? ¿Qué pasos concretos están tomando para darle mayor seguridad a la población?
This is a question for Commissioner Outlaw. And the question is, we have spoken with family members who lost loved ones this year and with other residents who tell us that they're afraid to go out in the streets, that they don't see a lot of patrolling, especially in the area of North Philadelphia. What concrete steps are being taken at this time to offer them greater safety, and what would be your message to them?
This comes up repeatedly, and I'll continue to say the same thing. We have to utilize the resources that we have in a very strategic manner. We deploy our officers in the areas where we know the data tells us we're experiencing the most violence, or we need to have the most increased visibility based off of where the data is taking us. Obviously, if we have, and I use the word luxury very loosely, but in addition to that, we have officers that are assigned to those specific areas. And if they're not chasing the radio going from call to call, for service, then, they have the luxury of discretionary time. What I ask of them is to get out of their cars so that they can be seen. Get out, just sit on the hood of the car if they can, or maybe get out and walk a block.
Thank you. La respuesta, obviamente, es que voy a repetir lo que he dicho anteriormente. Nosotros tenemos
in addition to provide details, increased visibility around rec centers. This is in addition to the calls for service. So,
Officer?
Yeah, Commissioner, you're freezing a little bit, so Armando's going to go ahead with that translation.
Okay, so let me start with this. La respuesta Argenis, es que voy a repetir lo que he dicho yo anteriormente en otras ocasiones porque es el mismo tipo de problema que me están reportando. Nosotros tenemos recursos que tenemos nosotros que desplegar estratégicamente y los desplegamos de acuerdo a lo que los datos nos indican. Nosotros ponemos más gente donde sabemos que hay más violencia y tratamos de que haya una mayor visibilidad de la presencia policial de acuerdo a lo que los datos nos indican. También tenemos el lujo, porque en algunos casos tenemos oficiales designados a ciertos espacios en la ciudad, de pedirles a estos oficiales que además de presentarse y resolver llamadas, que vayan de llamada en llamada, que por favor tengan la discreción o el lujo discrecionario de bajar de sus vehículos, de hacerse ver, de buscar a los residentes y conversar con ellos, y obviamente esto incluye los centros recreativos. Nosotros vamos a pedir mayores recursos para poder tratar de resolver estas inquietudes que tiene la ciudad y para que la gente se sienta confiada y segura.
Gracias. Y mi tercera pregunta es para el alcalde. Alcalde, ¿cuál cree usted que es el problema de raíz? ¿Cuál cree usted que es la raíz del problema de la delincuencia en Filadelfia? Armando, quiero que le digas que he hablado con policías en la calle y ellos me dicen que hay situaciones en las cuales ellos no pueden intervenir. Algunas organizaciones creen que la solución es una reforma para imponerles sanciones más severas a los delincuentes. ¿Qué opina usted al respecto?
You're muted.
Sorry, I apologize. Mayor, the question is for you. What do you think is at the root of crime in the city of Philadelphia? And I would like for you to know that I've spoken with several officers on the street, and they tell me that there are situations where, according to the law, they cannot intervene. Some organizations also believe that a solution could be found in a reform geared towards imposing heavier penalties to criminals. What do you think about it?
I can't comment on either hypothetical or unknown situations that were reported by some unknown officer. I just don't even know how to answer that question because there's no specifics to it. Look, I don't know why people turn to violence. I do know the situations that they're in for a lot of their lives have put them in a situation where they choose the wrong thing. And because of it, whether it's lack of education or lack of adequate housing or access to drugs and to trauma, there's a list of things that drive people in that direction. And we've been, since the beginning of this administration, trying to address those things on a comprehensive basis by funding education, funding job training, funding pre-K, funding those things that will change people's lives and keep them from picking up a gun or being shot with one. And that's what we've been doing for the last going on 6 years now. And we'll continue to do that until we're gone. But I can't tell you why people turn to crime other than the circumstances that they find themselves in. And we're working hard to change those circumstances. And that's all I really can tell you.
La respuesta que nos da el alcalde es que no se puede hacer comentarios sobre temas hipotéticos o sobre temas en los cuales se desconoce la identidad de estas personas y estas denuncias o estos relatos que hayan hecho. Por lo tanto, no se puede responder cuando no hay datos específicos. Tampoco sabemos realmente por qué la gente se torna a la violencia. Hay situaciones que enfrentan y obviamente esto puede que ver con una pobre educación o falta de acceso a vivienda y también al uso de drogas. Puede haber traumas que ellos hayan sufrido. Lo que nosotros sí podemos saber es que hay circunstancias o situaciones que los impulsan a ello y hemos estado trabajando y estamos trabajando con la gente para resolver esto de los últimos 6 años, proporcionando una educación más accesible, capacitación laboral para la gente que está desempleada y programas de pre-K o de pre-kindergarten para los niños para que tengan un buen comienzo en la vida. No sabemos exactamente por qué una persona se torna a las armas, por qué agarra un arma de fuego, pero lo que sí sabemos es que hay circunstancias que los pueden llevar a ello y nosotros estamos haciendo y vamos a continuar haciendo como los últimos 6 años a tratar de resolver las circunstancias que pueden impulsar a estas personas a oponerse a resolver sus asuntos con armas de fuego. Gracias.
Sí, bueno, gracias. No me quedó muy clara la respuesta, pero solo lo que quiero que le digas al alcalde es que la situación en específica es que, por ejemplo, en el norte de Filadelfia, la comunidad sabe quiénes venden drogas y la misma policía inclusive, pero ellos no lo pueden abordar. A eso era lo que me refería. Muchas gracias.
Well, the answer was not really what I was expecting, but I would like to point out once again that in regards to North Philadelphia, there's a specific situation where the neighbors and the police themselves know who's dealing drugs, but the people feel that they cannot reveal that. That's what I was referring to in specific.
Well, he didn't say that specifically in the beginning of the question. We have methods which people can report appropriate crime to the police for investigation and keep them out of it.
Nosotros no resolvimos la primera pregunta porque no se mencionó este detalle en particular, pero la ciudad cuenta con métodos para que las personas reporten a la policía esta información y se haga de una forma segura para resolver estos problemas.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much.
Okay, next we have Asaj Purple Blackwell.
Okay. Hi, guys. Good afternoon. First, I wanted to state, Mayor, thank you for aligning with City Council on the request for more money funded in for gun violence prevention. I think that it's really great. Then two, I would like to say, so Atlantic City, who has less shootings than we do, have recently implemented not only curfew, but curfew implementations along with sirens and actual punishable guidance for people who break the curfew. I heard Erica say earlier that we had curfew centers. Are we establishing a curfew? Are we looking to do the same or something close to what Atlantic City is doing? And also, Mr. Mayor, some of our neighbors have asked, do you have any plans on maybe attending any of the funerals, maybe even for the children, to show solidarity with the parents who are losing babies daily?
Well,
Thank you.
Attending funerals is obviously difficult because it's just a lot of issues surrounding the families and the circumstances, and it's just I tend not to want to inject myself into that. We could certainly consider that, but I don't believe that's going to happen. And Atlantic City, I don't know how you compare Atlantic City to us. I mean, I can't imagine Philadelphia setting off sirens, at 10 o'clock and people are going to abide by it. I mean, Erica, you have any additional insight into why we're not Atlantic City?
Yeah, so for clarification, the curfew that we have set in Philadelphia is for minors. It is not for adults. Atlantic City is just very, like the mayor said, Atlantic City is very different. The curfew that we have on the books has been on there for some time. We are now making sure that how we enforce curfew to ensure young people are safe from gun violence doesn't also put them at risk of interaction with the criminal justice system. But we are not going to do a citywide curfew at this stage, at any stage. We've not talked about that at all.
Do we have any plans on doing anything? I mean,
what do you mean anything?
Anything to combat, we can't control the shootings that are happening at night, during the daytime, but do we have any plans on, enforcing anything to stop violence at night?
I think there's a number of things. And so Police Commissioner and Deputy Commissioner Dales are talking about kind of how we're doing policing smarter and more geographic based as it relates to neighborhoods that are at the highest risk of gun violence. We have our community crisis teams that are out there in those same neighborhoods that are extremely vulnerable to violence. We're standing up curfew centers that will allow young people to be in a safe and programmed space for them during hours in which there is gun violence. We are investing more in community organizations so they can then be partners in communities that are particularly vulnerable to gun violence. I think we are doing a lot, but what we don't want to do is get us back into the situation that got us here, modeling behavior like the war on drugs that criminalized normal behavior, that disproportionately put Black and brown people in incarceration. What we want to do is be a partner in community, work with community, utilize the resources that we have available to us to come up with asset-based solutions as opposed to criminalizing behavior in building and rebuilding the pipeline from to prison.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Okay, next we have Lauren Make with NBC.
Hey guys, I'll try to keep this quick. Mayor, you mentioned the collaborative that the White House is leading, that Philadelphia is going to be part of, along with other cities. When the White House announced this, they've got some jargon in there talking about like peer-to-peer learning and some technical assistance. Can you explain, what this really means for Philadelphia? what are you hoping the city will get out of this?
I couldn't tell you right now what it means because we haven't seen the details other than the press release, and the president hasn't spoken yet about it. What we need as cities is the heft of the federal government when it comes to controlling the flow of guns and, frankly, the flow of drugs. I mean, certainly our police can handle on the street the day-to-day stuff that needs to be handled. But when the guns are flowing into cities across the country, there's got to be something the federal government can do. And I'm hoping that they'll do that. And also taking some of these folks off the street, not the low-level criminals, but the guys who are making the money, the guys who are making the money on the illegal drugs and on the illegal guns, and taking them into the federal court system where the penalties are much more severe. And they also have other powers of taking people out of circulation until trial. That creates a situation where people don't want to get locked up by the federal government because you're going to go away for a long time. And having that threat over their heads may make them slow down in their activities. But we need their help to control guns. As long as the state of Pennsylvania and the National Congress is not going to do anything about it, we need the help of those agencies to give us a hand to get this under control.
So does that mean a specific policy? Does that mean an executive order? What does that mean?
I don't know what it means yet because we have to have our operational conversations with them yet. I can't elaborate on just the press release and what the president was going to say at 4:15. We'd have to get into nuts and bolts.
One of the other things that they are announcing today is that they're sort of touting is cities being able to use some of that American Rescue Plan money for other things for public safety. Does that help you, or is the money that Philadelphia is getting basically already spent or designated?
No, this magical money that we've gotten from the federal government, everybody wants to spend all of it in a month. We had a serious deficit problem, a serious lack of revenue during the course of the pandemic. I don't think we're going to see another American Rescue Plan the size of what we've seen over the next year or so, because of the way Congress operates or doesn't operate. So we're going to have to segregate some of that money to make sure that, for example, people come back to work and work in the city and start paying the wage tax again. We don't know what the next year is going to bring, so I was not in a position to spend every dime we got from the feds. And so we're going to have to we have to move cautiously and make sure that we don't put the city put the city into fiscal duress.
So them saying you can spend it on public safety, that doesn't really do anything.
No, I didn't say it doesn't do anything. I can't tell you right now what is available and what we're going to spend it on within the next 30 seconds. We have to examine what it is they're expecting, what there is they're allowing, and then based on that, make cogent decisions on how to proceed. Can't do it in an hour press conference.
I just want to, Marissa, did you want to add to anything on that around the spending?
Sure, thank you. Yes, as the mayor mentioned, I just want to highlight that while we did receive $1.395 billion, or we will, it's not all here yet,
sure.
Over the coming 5 years. So 1.4 billion, huge amount of money. But when we looked at our budget deficits over the next 5 years, it's a $1.5 billion deficit. So we're still going to be making challenging choices. But as we've talked about, some of the choices we've made is with the money we do have, putting a greater share of that towards our anti-violence programs. But that means that, obviously that there's other areas that we weren't able to invest in as much. And so we're trying to balance the long-term fiscal health of the city with then making the best choices we can as we're allocating the dollars we have right now.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Okay, our last question is with Sherry Darden from Scoop USA.
Good afternoon, everyone. I guess I have a couple of questions. One is for Erica, and I think someone touched on this earlier with regards to the programs that are being initiated and actually planning and following the impact and doing impact studies. Will this information be released? And once you find out exactly what programs are working, will we then really dedicate more funding so that we can expand that from just a neighborhood to more of a citywide type program?
So we're taking a phased approach, and there are a couple moving parts with this. And so, with the programs that are city, totally city funded, city led, like our group violence intervention and our community crisis intervention programs, we are having evaluations done of those programs. When we see kind of what those evaluations tell us, we will let you all know. We will release it, and we will make adjustments to those programs based on what the evaluation tells us. As it relates to how we're adjusting investments in community-based and community-led programs, as we figure out what that coalition can look like, how that development can look like, we will absolutely nuance our investments to ensure those that are having the intended impact, deeper impacts, and are relevant to those communities. We are continuing to invest in those and supporting those and developing their capacity. And then lastly, as it relates to strategies in different neighborhoods, we have to be very careful about saying we're going to do things citywide. We want to make sure that we are being equitable in our approaches to how we are managing the violence that neighborhoods are experiencing. Even as we look at neighborhoods that might be even next to each other or that are experiencing high instances of violence, but have other layers of things that are happening. For instance, we know that there has been an uptick of violence in West Philadelphia, as well as in the Kensington area. What is happening on the ground in those two neighborhoods is very different, but they are experiencing some similar issues. How we approach that and the strategies we put in place in these two different neighborhoods have to be nuanced to what those neighborhoods are experiencing, what the assets are in those neighborhoods, and what the community looks like and feels like in those neighborhoods. And so while I would love to say if something works, we're absolutely going to send it all over the city, but we have to be really smart about how we place our resources given what is happening on the ground, block by block, neighborhood by neighborhood, to make sure our approach is responsive to what the needs are in that neighborhood.
Thank you. No, perfect. Thank you. And this question is with regard to the pinpoint grid. I guess it's for the commissioner's staff. So, and in conjunction with what Erica was just saying, the pinpoint grid, it seems to be kind of shifting or expanding. No, the crime is shifted out of the pinpoint grid to a more citywide. So is the plan to kind of, I guess the pinpoint grids are working because the crime is diminished in those areas. Is there a plan to kind of shift out of those areas and do some of the same things on a citywide level so that we can start to minimize on the citywide as opposed to just those specific areas?
So just to let you know, police-wise, law enforcement-wise, we're going to continue to maintain a presence within our pinpoint grids, and we want to continue to enforce the law within those grids. And just to let you know, I know you see a higher number citywide outside of the pinpoint grids. So just to let you know, there are hot spots, which we call them hot spots, outside of the pinpoint grids, and we actually assign police officers to those zones. We identify prolific offenders within those zones, and we take necessary actions to actually address it. So we are not ignoring the areas outside the pinpoint zones, just to answer your question. Okay. And we also utilize special units, and also we have our local, state, and federal partners who are assisting us with policing those zones and also investigating crimes that are being committed within those zones outside of pinpoint grids as well.
Okay, and I think this is for you again. With regards to guns and the ghost guns, the numbers again have increased. And it's, do we have any idea, like, is there a mass production in the city of Philadelphia ghost guns? Is it somebody producing them and then selling them? And do we have any idea how these numbers are coming about?
Yes, I don't want to go into details because, again, I don't know who's watching or listening. I don't want to educate folks who don't need to be educated. But I will say this, a majority of these guns are being purchased in Pennsylvania and also in Philadelphia. Also highly recommend those who own a gun, do not leave it in your cars. And if you have guns in your houses, secure it, please. Safeguard your weapons because folks are breaking into houses and are breaking into cars. And those are other ways of guns are getting on the street as well.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you, everyone. That concludes today's briefing. We will reconvene in 2 weeks on Wednesday, July 7th. Take care.